Point of No Return by Wildheart. Chapter 11, Tough Judgment, Part 2. Fluttershy had, unlike her friends, no problem in leading her group through the forest. It was in part luck, but the greater part was the ranger's knowledge of nature, both mundane and monstrous. Only a few of the soldiers had been injured, and those were minor wounds, annoyances at worst. This hadn't stopped the Pegasus from fussing over each and every hurt pony, and a few times under her command had to cajole her into continuing on. Especially for that one Griffin she found who said that he got punched by a random white unicorn that flew right at him for no apparent reason and decked him. Even Fluttershy wasn't normally so fussy, but every instance of harm reminded her that these ponies were willing to throw their lives away in the name of liberation. It weighed heavily on her mind, and even she had to admit to herself she was only trying to delay the inevitable. That realization, together with the worry of not being in position when the others arrived, saw to it that the newest casualty didn't receive anything more than a look and soft nod.
It doesn't look like you twisted your ankle, but please, be more careful.
The brown earth pony honestly looked surprised she hadn't immediately called for Atreides, and was thankful they weren't suffering a delay, simply because he tripped a root. Her hesitance, however, caused the unfortunate effect of those under the Pegasus' command to grow impatient to continue on. So when they reached the edge of the forest, and the other two groups weren't there, they immediately grew restless. Fluttershy stared at the ground, trying to think of a way to get this under control.
I'm not really a leader. I don't think I could keep them here until the others got here.
She thought to herself, frowning.
Oh, Applejack, Rarity, where are you?
An idea hit her, and she cleared her throat.
Excuse me. Is there anybody that could, maybe, scout the rear gate while we wait for the others?
I can, Miss Sir.
A nearby brass-colored Pegasus spoke as he stepped forward. Fluttershy recognized him as one of the Resistance members she'd been introduced to by Applejack before the mission started. The Resistance was better trained, if only by a margin. It would help her keep the militia on a leash.
What information do you require?
Fluttershy visited. She hadn't expected to specify this, but an answer came to her quickly nonetheless.
I just want to know how many are at the rear gate, and if you can find Rainbow Dash, that would be nice too. But only if you want to. It's not really a requirement.
The rebel resisted the urge to roll his eyes.
Miss Shy, we can see clearly from the gate from here. The only reason we're not being seen by them is that we have the advantage of trees. As for Miss Dash, if I flew out and tried to find her, it would put us both at risk of being seen.
He waved a hoof over to the right, along the tree line, trying to keep his frustration from showing.
I could move out of the gate's line of sight. That would take too long and be too much trouble. And not to mention, I could still be seen as I went up for the cloud cover.
No, this is past tense version of Night Never Ended. If we want a past tense version of Fallout Equestria, well, you could probably guess. That hoof got stomped down in front of him.
Your delays will cost us our chance, Miss Shy. There are 50 ponies at that gate. We outnumber them 2-1. We could easily take them.
Something about that sounded off to Fluttershy. She didn't know much about tactics, but she wasn't stupid.
But there's most likely more inside. I mean, there's gotta be a small barracks. We don't know exactly how many are in there.
The brass Pegasus hadn't expected a retort and was caught off guard. His temporary commander couldn't feel relief at this small victory, however.
But,
well, if we charge through, we could catch them off guard and lock them out, right?
Feeling a little humbled by her surprising show of logic, the rebel nodded meekly.
Yes, Miss Shy. They don't know we're here, and it's a relatively short distance.
The former ranger closed her eyes, weighing her options.
If the others are in trouble, charging will get us all.
She stuttered as she dodged the word killed. She opened her eyes and asked,
All right, who's our best tactician?
That would be me, came the gruff voice of a gray unicorn that looked rather tired. Fluttershy didn't like the expression. It reminded her of how being down Applejack looked most of the time.
What do you need, ma'am?
Fluttershy pawed at the ground with a hoof, digging in slightly.
So many ponies are hanging on my words. I really don't like this.
Fluttershy pushed that thought away and steeled herself.
No, I can do this. I protected Trixie. I got us all back in shape. I can do this too.
Ma'am? You sounded concerned, not impatient like the scout had. That helped Fluttershy convince herself, and when it spoke, it was with a firm tone that belied her gentle voice. It surprised the ponies that heard it.
I want you to tell me our options. What's the best course of action? Waiting for the others? Or charging now?
The unicorn rubbed a grizzled chin with a full hoof. Fluttershy tried not to smile at the thought of him seeming more like a goat than a pony.
Well, like Glassbellows there said, we outnumber them pretty bad. You make a good point, saying that there might be more inside. But there's probably not many more. The only real problem is probably that gate up when it eventually gets close. But I think we can get ourselves in with all the air ponies we got. Better than a battering ram.
So, you think we should charge?
Fluttershy looked thoughtful.
But won't propping the gate up mean we have to hurt the ponies guarding it?
I'm afraid so, ma'am.
He levitated the stick over and started tracing in the dirt, making a rough diagram of the area.
Don't worry, though. If we overwhelm them, they scatter or surrender. And we can get just about the prisoner out of the gate, and we go in. Knock him out.
Fluttershy looked relieved at that, then perked up as a thought struck her.
We should soften them up first. Make the charge easier.
The old unicorn grinned and gave Fluttershy a light smack on the back, making her squeak and smile awkwardly.
Gotta say, for such a gentle soul, you really got your head in the right place. I think that's a pretty good idea. How about you, Bells?
The Pegasus simply nodded. The development of a strategy was interesting enough, but at this point he was starved for some action. After all, this was to be their crowning moment, the grand finale.
Alright then, here's the plan.
As the unicorn spoke, Fluttershy only half listened, looking out to the gate. She could only hope no one knew she would be guarding it.
You know what? You know what, Spearmint? Life is awesome.
The light-grained unicorn rolled his eyes, but smiled good-naturedly. Okay, Scoots, I'll bite. Why is life so great for you? Mitt was very nervous about the current situation. Guarding the rear gate was usually a punishment detail. The ground was uneven, often muddy, and was facing the Everfree Forest, which in a word was terrifying. It was worse tonight, however, since their commanding officer made it very clear this had become a very important thing to guard. It wasn't hard to guess why. Knowledge of the prison break had been impossible to suppress inside the palace, and Spearmint knew any attack would come after this gate. Yet, there were only 100 ponies stationed here. 50 on the outside, 50 on the reserve. Scootaloo, on the other hand, seemed psyched. That annoyed Spearmint to some degree, but he didn't want the pony who killed Buzzes. Sea was grinning like a loon, and figured maybe her happiness would be contagious if he gave it a chance.
So, look, the Pegasus began. I applied for the Sky Shadow Squadron later, and Captain Lighthouse said he can't think of a reason why I should be with them. As soon as I'm done with this stupid gate, I'm one of the best, baby!
That is good news, Spearmint thought. You deserve it, Scoots. You're always working yourself to the bone for Her Majesty. And hey, no one more standing in one spot for an entire night, right? He dusted the seating of his spear. He erected his horn's magic before leaning on it a bit.
Yeah, I get to fly in circles all night. Ha ha!
Scootaloo said, holding back a light.
But at least I'm flying, not standing. Second thing is, we're finally going to get to see some action.
That's not a good thing. The unicorn retorted, shaking his head. I'm scared. I used to be too. Besides, he tapped a hoof outside. I heard Rainbow Dash was with them. He regretted his teasing, as Scootaloo saw him a withering glare.
Her teeth gritted. That's not Rainbow Dash. It's some kind of actor. If I get my hooves on that mare...
The soldier couldn't believe anyone would do something so heinous as to dishonor the dead, especially not someone as awesome as Dash was.
Whoa, Scoots!
Spearmint leaned away from her, raising a hoof. Calm down, Philly. I forgot you had a thing for her. I did have a thing for her! Spearmint winced, closing one eye. The commander's head snapped in her direction. You two! Get down! Their entire formation turned to glare at him, it seemed. Yeah, sorry, Commander. It won't happen again. Spearmint apologized, giving his superior officer a nervous grin until he turned away. Scootaloo hissed at her fellow officer in a low voice. She was my idol. I idolized her. I didn't love her. I didn't have a crush. Spearmint slowly nodded, turning his head away. Sorry. There was a long, awkward silence, during which time Scootaloo leaned to one side, trying to give her left side a much-needed break in the weight it was carrying. The uneven ground was getting to her. After a few moments of disquiet, the unicorn cleared his throat and asked, So, yeah, that's why you're all psyched? It's pretty cool. He grinned again, and Spearmint breathed a sigh of relief as he answered, Nah, there's something else, and it's the best out of the three. But you can't tell any pony, or I swear I'll buck you in the next week. My lips are sealed. Lay it on me. Scootaloo looked around, conspiratoriously for a moment, before continuing with, With the imminent danger pay I'm getting from this, I'll have enough to buy that ring I've been wanting. Spearmint couldn't help himself. Wow, Scoots. I had no idea you felt that way. He fought back a smirk, instead of putting on an overblown look of sorrow. I'm just not that ready for that kind of commitment, baby. He couldn't stop his smirk when the Pegasus blushed fiercely and stammered, No, I did. It's not like. I'm teasing. Calm down. Sheesh. It's for that filly you've been dating for, right? What's her name? You're a jerk, Mint. She took a deep breath, fighting down the embarrassment. Her name's Sweetie Belle. I told you all about her. Spearmint rolled his eyes and shrugged. Look, I'll know this sounds shocking, but coming from a friend, no one is ever interested in someone else's crush. Doesn't matter how many dates or often you... Hey, you hear that? Scootaloo looked to the air. Ears perked, is set straight forward. Hear what? Spearmint was cut off by a loud hissing noise, and a chorus of screams following the distinctive noise of arrows striking flesh and armor. Unicorn fell over with an arrow through the eye, instantly killed. Scootaloo stared, shocked into uselessness, as the enemy Pegasi swooped down, scattering the already panicking ranks. The soldier stumbled, still a bit shocked as he shakily set herself into a stance. Holding her blade-bearing hoof out in front of her, a charge was coming from the forest, but an arrow biting into her back made sure she wouldn't be able to face it. Fluttershy tried not to stare at all the fallen bodies as her group charged the gate, but she couldn't help but look as they tried to force the gate open. Her teal eyes watered as they traveled through the carnage. It would have been terrifying for any pony, but for her, it was as if she'd taken her first steps into hell. She couldn't look away. Blood was everywhere, staining the ground, turning any earth into rust-colored mud. Element of kindness couldn't help but lean forward and retch. Thankfully, she hadn't eaten anything at the party, because she knew something like this would happen. She hoped it wouldn't. A nearby groan snapped Fluttershy's attention to a group of nearbodies nearby, as he noticed an earth pony's shoulder. One of Nightmare Moon's stirred a bit. She made a rush to his side, just as behind her a loud groaning and clanking of chains rang out, as the gate was finally forced. Just before the former ranger reached the side of the wounded, she felt her tail tug and yelped, looking behind her. Bells held her tail in his mouth and shook his head.
I'd have to help. I can save him, please.
She begged piteously, and Bells shook his head again. It was all he could do to help him keep himself from letting her. Spitting out her tail, he argued,
And why is it always the tail of you our ponies?
No, we had to get in. We don't have time to help the enemy.
Bells bit his bottom lip as he realized how cold it sounded.
Yet. We don't have time to help their wounded. Yet.
But they'll die. Look at him. He's barely hanging on.
Fluttershy trembled as he started to cry, looking back to the fallen soldier. He stopped breathing, as if on cue. The Pegasus hung her head and sobbed quietly, while the brass Pegasus laid a wing over her back, trying to comfort her.
Listen. You go on ahead. Secure the gate. You're not really expected to fight anyway. See if you can patch up any of the wounded around here, and we'll clear the path. I won't tell any pony what you're doing if you don't.
Fluttershy nodded, so now she didn't know how useful she'd be after seeing the soldier die.
So much noise.
The small filly thought as he trotted along the palace hallway. Adasia had heard they were under attack by a guard, who didn't know how to keep his mouth shut. The news had frightened her, but she was taken with the curiosity of a foal, and the young unicorn wanted to see for herself, and it was for this reason she approached the rear gate. The sound of the battle echoed through the halls around her, and any pony else. The din would have been terrifying. Adasia loved it.
So much noise to play with.
That put a bounce in her step and a smile on her face. Deep inside, she knew she shouldn't be so excited. After all, ponies were getting hurt. The filly couldn't help it, however. The cacophony of bows sounded so appealing. See? Adasia! Clang! The sound of the blade. Curse! The sound of someone being tackled, maybe?
It's just like the opera. So exciting.
When she peeked around the corner to the source of the chaos, she expected a grand romantic scene of heroic knights sorely thrashing evil rebels, or perhaps they were struggling. But a violent effort ensured victory and safety of the queen. What she saw, however, wasn't the sight a fool expects of war, but the hard truth. The gods were losing, and badly. They mounted a brave defense and had a choke point, but their front had been struck with magic and arrow, and the rebels had broken in on even ground. Adasia trembled, stunned at the horrors of battle. Swords sliced through flesh, caught on bone, the victim of the attack screaming as her assailant yanked the blade away. A spear ran through her chest and struck from a unicorn's back, covered in crimson. A spell burnt the nerve pony, flesh seared and bubbling in an instant. Adasia couldn't feel anything but disgust now and outrage. It was a terrifying sight, to be sure, but anger rose up instead of fear. They had tainted such beautiful sounds. Her horn glowed. She would use those sounds then, and show them what they were doing was wrong. Fluttershy rushed toward the rear gate. She had done all she could for 3 ponies before she realized how selfish she had been. The resistance needed her, and she needed to be with them. As much as it pained her, saving Equestria was more important than saving a few soldiers. It was a horrible thing, but she had to face a lot of horrible things lately. This was just another nightmare to overcome. The battle seemed like it was on the side of the resistance. In fact, as soon as she reached the rear lines, the guards had surrendered, making it to Pegasus seem silly for panicking so much. There were still classes of steel, however.
Please don't fight to the death. There's no point.
Before Fluttershy could vocalize her thought, however, the sound began to waver. To her, it was still the volume were abruptly increasing and decreasing, completely at random. Then, it happened. Fluttershy was glad to be outside, for as she was in the hall, the sudden, deafening boom would have been enough to burst her eardrums. The echoes might even have the force to batter her physically. Every single other soldier, however, was not so lucky. The reverberating surge knocked them most flat. Even then, the assault only repeated itself. Ponies being bashed down and again by what felt like a solid wave of sound grew dizzy. Those that remained standing collapsed. All movement ceased, and with it, all sound. Fluttershy headed down, 4 legs over her head, trying to block out the horrible racket. And when all was quiet, she slowly rose up, eyes traveling over the fallen. She trotted over silently, but quickly, and breathed out a sigh of relief when she saw all the falling were still drawing near. At least, those who were not already struck down by the battle. The Pegasus' smile faded when her wandering eyes fell over a small white filly, who was staring straight at her.
Oh no. The poor thing.
Fluttershy thought to herself as she slowly approached.
Does she see all of this?
Adasia had smiled when she saw she had done a good job. There had been so much noise to play with. Using it had been easy. Too easy, in fact. She felt like a giant and puffed her chest out in pride.
Mama will be proud of me. I made them stop.
However, her bravado instantly melted when she saw movement. A pale yellow Pegasus had gotten up and was now walking around. Fear overtook Adagia. Finally, she stared with eyes wide with heart.
See? She wasn't affected? Oh no. No, 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 no. Mama, help me.
She tried to force herself to move, but her legs wouldn't work. Pegasus glanced up, and her eye met the foal's. Adasia finally made herself take a slow step back, and then the mare stared towards her.
She's going to kill me.
That thought broke her out of her petrified state and darted off down the hall. She could hear the Pegasus right behind her, and blind terror drove the filly into making random turns. She knew the palace like the back of her hoof, normally, but her panic kept her from thinking straight, and soon ran into a dead end. Literally, Adasia smacked into a wall, and fell, dizzy from the strike to her forehead. And she looked up groggily. The sight of the still approaching Pegasus brought clarity, or something close to it, to her mind. As she pressed herself tightly against the wall she had run into,
Why is she making any sound? I'm so scared. Where are you? Mama, help me.
the thoughts all jumbled in her mind. She shrieked when she finally felt a hoof touch her. She jerked, but a pair of legs wrapped around her. Kicking out randomly, Adasia flailed in panic, trying to drive off the mare, but she only succeeded in wearing herself out. The poor thing was obviously panicked beyond reason. Fluttershy knew the only remedy would be to let her tire herself out. She winced at every kick, but didn't let go of the filly. Paid off when the unicorn finally just started crying, shaking in fear.
Poor thing. She must have think I want to hurt her.
Fluttershy instead gave a soft nuzzle on the forehead, rubbed over her back with one of her hooves as she held the foal in.
Shh. It's all right. I'm not going to hurt you.
The mare smiled and hummed soothingly, even as all the foal had just seen, plus the panic of being chased hit her. She began to sob. Fluttershy knew how the little pony felt. She wanted to cry too, but comforting the foal was comforting in itself to the Pegasus. She didn't want to let go, especially when Adasia clung to her, burying her face into Fluttershy's chest.
Everything will be all right. I promise.
The promise was just as much to herself as to the foal. There you go, Fluttershy. You did something awesome. Feel better?
Well, no, I'm still missing the eyeball, and I still feel a little down that I had to lose an eye to get to this point in the fic.
You're still waiting for
Last of the Dragon Lords.
I promise you, Flutters, one day. Really. Verity groaned as she lifted herself up from the dirt in the ravine. Her right side hurt, but a glance over it revealed no wounds, and the lack of excruciating pain told the unicorn nothing was broken.
Like my lucky stars for small favors.
Verity inwardly complained, standing shakily on all four hooves. The thought of how dirty she was became quickly buried deep in the back of her mind, as she knew she had much bigger problems, namely, the stallion that had fallen with her. The fashionista knew very little about first aid, but she...
Please, please, please be alive!
Putting an ear to his chest, Verity cursed the loud beating of her own heart as her panic rose, drowning out the sound of his. Even if there wasn't any there,
Come on now, please, get up!
that his sides were moving, meant he wasn't drawing in breath. And though she did know at least how to give mouth to mouth, the thought of causing more damage with the chest presence was certainly out of the question. Verity felt now more helpless in her life. A shadow fell over her, and her magic jerked a bow and quiver from the colt's frame, the unicorn ready to use the weapon. The source of the shadow was a tan unicorn, standing on a large root system that cut through the ravine in front of her. He's dead. You can't do anything to save him, he stated slowly, drawing an arrow back on his own bow and aimed straight at her. She barely noticed. A cold rage overtook Flaherty as she notched an arrow on her bowstring. Soon Fletcher loosed his own arrow. She knocked it out of the sky with her own. That is awesome!
I'll not give you the satisfaction of capturing me alive, good sir!
Rarity hissed. Fletcher merely inclined his head. So be it. Fletcher hopped back, following behind the mass of roots. A few moments later, an arrow barely missed Rarity, thudding it to the ground near her left leg. The white unicorn barely even flinched, trying to follow where the arrow had come from. Feeling that, She darted for a rock to hide behind and tried to calm herself.
Oh, Verity, why did you do that?
You are not a ruffian fighting to the death, she admonished herself, nozzling a new arrow while taking her quiver.
25 more arrows. I think that should be enough.
When she had the free time, Verity had taken up archery as a hobby. Her natural attention to detail made her easily capable of taking all aspects of a shot into account when loosing an arrow, making her much more than a decent at sport. However, what the unicorn had never done was anticipate actually using it to hurt or kill someone. And now that her anger was fading, it left behind panic. A panic that only became worse when an arrow whizzed in from behind her. Verity jerking her head on instinct. The reflex was just in time to avoid being pinned to the rock by her head, and as it was, sliced into her hair and broke the stone.
You ruined my mane, you no good son of a master!
She let fly her own missile, but due to being startled by the previous attack, she was lucky enough for it to sail over Fletcher's head and make him duck down. Her opponent was now standing downrange of her, which hardly mattered, as the ravine was mostly wind-free. He stuck up behind her. While that itself was cause for alarm, it meant that there was an easy way out of the crevice. She simply had to take care of this first. Taking advantage of the ranger's prone position, she quickly notched her third bow.
No wind to speak of. The range is too short to require an angle. You can make this shot in your sleep, Verity, so stop trembling!
Indeed, her body's shaking was making it hard to aim. By the time she loosed the shaft, Fletcher struggled to his hooves, and barely had enough time to turn an arrow aside with his magic. Verity let off a very unladylike curse and hopped to the other side of her rock. In the nick of time, too, as he was moving over it, an arrow flew over her close enough to cut into her back. Though she hardly noticed thanks to the adrenaline, she lined up a shot in the ranger's general direction, forcing him to dive behind a fallen log. With that, Verity took silent note of how many arrows she had left, and carefully angled her next shot.
This arrow will fly out of the ravine. The wind is noticeable even up here, but you don't forget to factor in that, young lady!
While she wasn't sure whether her internal monologue was more to keep herself calm or to actually remind herself of the process, she was sure that the next arrow would find its mark. Letting it fly into the air, she took a deep breath and held it in anticipation. When she heard a wet thunk, she didn't know whether to celebrate or feel sick. Instead, she slid down on the rock with her back to it, only to immediately yelp and jerk away. There was a lot of red on that boulder, and it was from her back.
Oh dear! That's a lot of blood.
Verity numbly thought to herself, not taking in the full severity of the situation. That shock almost cost her the battle. A torrent of loud hisses in the air made her turn her head upwards weakly. Verity was still not all there after the shock of seeing her blood in such large amounts. But the sight she saw snapped her out of it. Easily, 30 or more arrows were raining down toward her.
How did he? No time for this, you stupid thing!
Verity's only idea was a crazy one. She immediately put it into action. She deflected arrows with magic before. For a unicorn with such focus as her, this was easy. But she never tried firing them back, let alone more than a score of them. Then again, Verity never tried fighting to the death before. The oncoming arrows sank toward the ground, as if time itself had slowed, their target's adrenaline kicking into full swing. She picked out the arrows as she needed to turn, and only ones she needed. Her head hurt. She never had to deal with so much information coming at her at once.
Is this what it's like for Twilight? How's he studying so intensely?
The thought pressed to her mind quickly, it seemed. A strange calm had fallen over the element of generosity as she picked arrows, holding them back in her magic. She almost seemed to be watching herself, detached, as she stopped one arrow. 5, 8, 15. As she had the presence of mind to really comprehend what she was doing, her jaw would have dropped. As it was, only arrows she discarded as harmless dropped around her. She would graciously return to rest. Fletcher slowly rose his head from his cover, to check and see if the flurry made its mark. It hadn't. Verity was untouched by them, and as half of the arrows he fired sailed back to him, he could only watch in utter disbelief. He closed his eyes, accepting death gracefully. The white unicorn's coat was stained red. If it wasn't for the fact that it was blood, the startling contrast might have been striking, perhaps even beautiful. The blood flow hadn't stopped, but Rarity didn't feel dizzy or numb, as he had always been told about bleeding out. So she supposed he was all right.
Now, to get out of here.
No. She shook her head with a grimace.
I have to check. It would be foolish not to.
Glancing to one of the many arrows buried to the ground around her, the unicorn attempted to uproot it with her magic, but nothing came to her. She gave that no thought for now, for she might have panicked. Instead, the mare gripped the shaft in her teeth and jerked it up, cool with the earth striking her face. She shuddered and slowly walked over to the hiding spot of the felled lieutenant. She had to laugh at her first thought.
I sorely need a bath. And then I need to revise my priorities.
Rarity stepped around the log, careful not to trip on the oncoming root.
I've abused my friends, become a national traitor, instead trekking through a forest and fought by a beast.
Including an innocent griffin that did not deserve to be punched! Seriously, what did he do to you, Rarity? She paused, staring at the ground, not wanting to look. The fact that she wasn't dead yet meant the ranger almost certainly was. She didn't want to see that just yet.
I've been shot at, once the coat died in front of me, fought to the death, and now... Now I've killed a stallion.
She finally looked up.
This is the worst night I've ever had.
The spot, of course, riddled with arrows, and Fletcher was no exception to that. He was gone. There was absolutely no two ways about it.
Am I supposed to give her another eulogy? Do you do that for an enemy? Oh, bucket!
Rarity closed her eyes and spoke.
I really didn't know what I'm supposed to say. I suppose I am sorry it came to this.
A sob was rising in her, but she kept it down. Now was not the time for a breakdown.
I did not know you too well, and I think that is to my loss. Of course, I hope you forgive me when I say I'm rather glad I wasn't close to you now. That would be simply dreadful.
Unicorn grit her teeth and said a foolish statement, mumbling to herself,
By Celestia, you're bad at this, Rarity.
With a shake of her head, however, she forced herself up again.
You were always helpful to the citizens of Ponyville.
I certainly saw you assisting ponies around our fair town quite often. Of course, she trailed off as she looked around to the body of the cult she'd fallen in with.
I have to wonder what horrible things you've done, but I truly don't think that matters anymore.
Rarity could feel the pressure rising up. Her voice was breaking, and tears began to sting her eyes, forcing her to blink. That only made her vision blurry.
Rest in peace, Fletcher. I'm sorry.
The mare's legs buckled as he fell, causing her eyes set tightly.
I'm sorry.
She could hear shouting from her above. They had won, and now we're coming to help her. They didn't mean a damn thing to her right now.
Oh, Celestia, I'm sorry.
She killed a pony. That was all that meant anything to her. Rainbow Dash never knew what hit her. One moment, she was reveling in yet another victory over the last section of Pegasi, and the next, tackled out of the air. Dazed from the blow, the Pegasus spun head over heels toward the tower. She barely had time to right herself before she crash-landed into a window, hose first. The window shattered into 1,000 shards. She curled to a ball to avoid taking too many cuts. This also let her hit the ground tumbling, helped her to break her fall. All in all, the aspiring Wonder Ball had taken much worse falls. It was a good thing, too, since her ability to recover almost immediately made her ready to roll away from a sweeping attack from another the Spitfire. Rainbow Dash's eyes widened as she stared up at her idol, the latter giving a kind of smirk. Hey, kid, let's make this simple, okay? I really don't want to have to hurt you. Despite her arrogance, the lieutenant's heart was pounding. Stupid. You could have killed her, just like last time. Stupid nag. Keep it together, Spitfire. Keep it together. Her expression never changed from that until Dash let out a snort. Hey, yeah. Put it out, yours. I'm not scared of you. The giant Pegasus dug a hoof over the floor, wings flared out and head low in an aggressive stance. I'm not interested in talking, so let's just get this over with. Spitfire took a deep breath, steeled herself for what she was about to do. Then, she dove for Rainbow Dash.